Good day. I recently received an email from a certain young lady. Well, she sent an anonymous email, but she said that she is in the process of deciding to marry a certain gentleman whom she says she loves so dearly with her heart. But she says that she is a bit concerned whether this man should pay Lobola or not, because she has fears and concerns that the payment of Lobola might entitle the gentleman to want to override her in the marriage. Maybe it gives them kind of some marital power, even though legally marital power has been abolished, but the fact that the man has paid Lobola might give him a bit of a leverage to want to always override the lady in the context of the marriage and impose his will, so to speak. So she's got this myriad of questions about whether payment of lobola should continue in this time and era. So I said to her, I'm not a very competent person to answer that question, but nevertheless, because it's been sent to me, let me try and see how I can maneuver around it. Now, there are quite a number of concerns as she raised, as I have already alluded to. Number one, some men consider it a form of payment. Therefore, they think that it entitles them to have a greater say than the woman in the context of the marriage. And secondly, they believe that because they are the ones who pay, therefore they control the greater stakes. And at the same time, women may tend to think that they are being sold as merchandise. And there's also the assumption that people get rich. You see, the families of the family of the bride somehow receives wealth, so they are getting rich. So those are some of the questions that have always, been raised around this issue. For instance, when Theophilus Shepstone came into Southern Africa, well, he grew up here literally, but I'm trying to say, when he was assisting the British in the colonization of KZN, the area now known as KZN, as well as the Eastern Cape, there was an assumption that the men, the families of the brides were making a lot of money from this lobola. Hence, women were being sold and so on and so forth. So then the question is, should lobola continue? Does it entitle the men to anything, any voice greater than that of women? Is it the cause for gender violence, since men believe that they are entitled to a greater voice? Well, maybe not quite, but the fact that these people come in not as equals, that on its own does to an extent maybe undermine the voice of the women, while at the same time giving men the impression that they must have a greater say and a greater control. After all, if you walk into a shop and buy yourself a device, say a computer, you don't get home and then the computer starts telling you what you must do with it. So if people reason along those lines, then you could then assume that payment of lobola does in fact to some extent cause or contribute to gender violence. But now, coming back to the basics, what are the justifications for lobola? Number one, men and women may both be equal in law, but they are not the same. Even within the context of the marriage transaction, it is only the woman who falls pregnant, who carries a child inside herself, her body, for 9 months. So she bears a burden which a man naturally will never be able to bear. Which then means if the man is also being asked to contribute just maybe something to show that honor and respect, Why should he feel settled with a burden? Why should he feel as if he's being unfairly treated? Because at the end of the day, when the marriage continues and subsists, he derives benefits without incurring burdens. I'm trying to say here, he gets children born to his name. Meanwhile, he does not have to carry them inside of his own body the way the woman does. And deadly, because the children tend to be biologically dependent on the mother, seeing that they have to suck right from the mother's breast. That on its own means that the man is kept distant, therefore he must play the role of a provider. And one of the things that happens is when he when he gives out gifts to the family of the bride, uh, he is actually showing that he's able to provide, first and foremost. And secondly, in the traditional African sense, that lobola was a form of insurance to guide against any eventualities. For instance, you would know that during those times, the erstwhile times, men lived perilous lives, always going into war and so on and so forth. So if the husband got killed in the war, and the young bride had to go back to his family, that is his maternal family, then that would mean she would go there with children, but with no resources to feed those children. So as a way of inheritance, it was always required for the men to provide the resources as a reserve that the woman would fall back on once, if rather in the event that the husband died or she was divorced and she had to go back to her family. That explains why when her first son fell in love and wanted to marry, the maternal uncles of this son would then be expected to contribute towards the payment of lobola, because then it meant that this woman would no longer have to revert to her family even if her husband died at war, or even if there were any problems in the marriage. For instance, she could be accused of witchcraft and be divorced. So traditionally, that was the essence of this lobola, to create a reserve resource for the woman to revert to in the event that she is divorced. So traditionally, lobola played that function, but because people have been corrupting things, people have been corrupting customs, all those purposes have fallen away, or they have been misunderstood, to the point that some people now assume that when you marry a woman, when a man marries a woman and pays lobola, they are literally buying some merchandise. So to the extent that these men view these women as merchandise, it becomes the cause for all this abuse that takes place. So then at the end of the day, what comes out clearly is that maybe an understanding is required, and a discussion is required, an open discussion around the matters of the essence of lobola, the very foundational principles of lobola, and how it can be contextualized within the current setting. Because now lobola cannot continue to play the role that it used to play in the past. People have had to reinvent its purposes, and sometimes with the corrupting influences, to the point that they have watered down its fundamental role, and as a result, it is being abused. Goals that are not related to it are being met. As a result, we have people being abused within the context by men who assume that they have a greater role. So that's how I tried to answer the young lady who sent me the email. Well, I'm sure every one of you out there has got their own ideas about them. Feel free to comment on what I've just said and ask questions if you need to, and so that we can continue the discussion, because this is a very open area of discussion, I must say. Thank you very much for being part of this presentation. I look forward to engaging you again in future. Please subscribe and like my channel so that I can continue to give you some more stuff. Enjoy your day. Bye bye.